Yeah, so the good, I'm going to give some examples of some projects we've been working on that I think are good cases for personalised learning. And then further on I'll look at some of the negative and critiques of those. These come from a range of education, corporate and other spaces. And I've simply built on top of LMS and other open source software. So the first one, gamification. Quite a hot trend at the moment. And here we're using concepts of points when I do activities, posting to forums, recommending courses, interacting with other peers, as well as badges on different areas of progress. So I can choose my own pathways there. As I said, tied long term is the idea of bringing in recommendations for courses. So peers can say, I think you'd really like this course, as well as a system that recommends that based on previous choices. So it starts to give you kind of recommended pathways that you can choose as you go through. To start visualising that, we've been looking at individual calendars where people can then choose and project when they're going to do that course into the future. So it says you should really check out this course, but I'm busy right now, I want to do it next February, next March, or my manager might be telling me I have to do it now. We've also been working in the vet space, looking at how we can track individual assessments, so students can see their progress on particular units, how they're doing on all their assessments, and when they need to achieve particular things by. So again, that idea of how they can start working on their pathway. With training plans, looking at, here we've got different modules, school, those types of activities, and you're looking at how long people have spent on each of those, and also what grades and the kind of progress bars you can see on the right hand side. So again, people can see their own sort of personal progress through that. This is my latest current project. This is working with schools curriculum to have different progress models for primary, foundation, secondary, through to adult learning models. So again, we're using more visual indications and the ability to contact your teacher directly. Okay, so those are the good examples. The bad, look at, perhaps you might think about whether you're training or you're learning on environments. Quite often end up something like this, rather than the dream of completely personalised routes, everyone choosing what they would or wouldn't like to do. So the first one, the Ford model, you can have any colour as long as it's black. Again, that's quite you see that in quite hierarchical LMSs and training delivery. You have to do that training plan is already pre-populated for you, and you have no real say over what goes in there. The McDonald's model, have whatever you want as long as it's on the menu. So you might have a set of courses someone can choose from, but they don't have a lot of say in what those courses are, what courses, when they need to do those, and what sort of courses they might want to do in the future. So again, it's quite false for them. Those looking at some more recommendation, when we start to use software to suggest packages, you start to filter out things that might challenge someone. So if you just do things that someone likes, they never get challenged to do something that might expand their opportunities. And Facebook and other sites, we see that a lot. In the education space, we quite often see mass customization. You have very standardized curriculum, and you have very limited choices for different timings or pathways through. There's essentially a very standardized set of modules and selections. The ugly, this is from some ideas on paper I was presenting last week. And this looks at some of the kind of negative structures and some ways we might get out of those or avoid going into those traps. So the first one is performativity. This is when we start to rank people, rank courses, rank schools, rank curriculum, put them all in a hierarchy. Those at the top tend to progress very well, those at the bottom tend to get stuck there. And so we create quite inequalities with the way we structure learning choices and personalisation. The other model where we start to enforce certain disciplines, self-regulation, people start to have to conform to organisational structures, standards, things that are external to them. And so they are constrained in the types of learning, training, particularly some of those informal aspects. How could we avoid that? What if we designed our systems a bit differently? What if we took a more human approach and said that we want critical people who think about health, well-being, broader aspects of what it means to be human? Would the systems and the examples we saw earlier look very different? My argument is yes for those. The other one is perhaps if we took a more democratic approach to education. Can we start with individual identities rather than pre-structured training programs? And take those identities into account when we're designing the types of learning and training that people need to do. This is my summary of that. And my idea here is that we should be focusing on stories, and individual stories, and how people can tell those, perhaps evidence those, as the first presentation had, and how do we lead those rather than getting stuck in very globalised and international stories. So thank you very much for listening.
Performativity, that's a word.
Yes, that's contributing to the optimal national system. Right. So the governments and bodies that are and external agencies will be very keen on those types of educational programs.
Excellent. Word. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Just wanted to, I'm curious about your view on user-generated content. Because for me, you were talking about sort of, personalisation and democracy, and just wondering whether you had a view on how you actually bring content from learners back into the system.
Yeah, that was the kind of final tool, and where we perhaps should be going, is how you start to build those stories that are individual stories, which would be almost exclusively starting out with user-generated content, and then mapping your curriculum to around that. Where are people going? How does it affect? What's their practice? So in a classroom, if you've got 30 people, you tend to just see one story, and it's the teacher's story. How do you get all those 30 stories to be part of the learning process? So I would see that as one of the most crucial challenges we're facing. How do we bring more of that into...
Any solutions? Because I agree, it's a challenge I think we all face, is we sort of know we need the user-generated content, but how do you really bring it into what is in essence commercial products?
Did have a couple of interesting pedagogical ideas with kind of ethical dilemmas approaches and archaeological approaches, where people bring an artifact and then build out learning and history from that. So from their experience, and then those kind of teaching roles you were discussing, or the education roles, you have that more facilitator. How do you get them to expand and build on top of that, rather than trying to force content on them? Would be a couple of ideas of how we might start doing that.